Okay, so you're here because true crime, right? Well, let's be honest, the Jeffrey Dahmer case,
Yeah.
it's got to be one of the most chilling and perplexing in history. So today we're going to take a deep dive, and we're not just going to recount the crimes. We're going to really try to understand, like, what turned this guy into
a monster.
A monster, right? Like, what factors could have contributed to that?
Well, luckily we've got a lot of sources for this one. We've got articles and legal documents and even some excerpts from a pretty chilling interview he gave.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we're going to try to paint a more complete picture of him,
right.
You know, get behind the headlines.
Right, because I think to really understand this case, we have to go beyond just the sensationalism and really look at, like, the complexities of his personality and his upbringing and, like, the path.
That he carved out.
Yeah, it carved out. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And again, I just want to reiterate, not trying to justify anything here, but I think
of course not. No.
Yeah.
But looking at what contributed to this, like,
and how he,
however disturbing they are,
how he got to this place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start with his early years. Grew up in Wisconsin. We've got some information about his childhood, and it sounds like his family life was anything but stable.
Yeah, he described it as tense. Lots of arguments between his parents. Imagine, you know.
Yeah, like constant tension.
Yeah, just constant tension. As a kid, absorbing that, you know.
And there's some information that young Jeffrey was, like, kind of doted on.
Yeah. Early on, he was like the center of their world.
At first, yeah. But then, as his father became more and more consumed by his studies, and his mother was struggling with mental health issues, it seems like there was a shift. And maybe Dahmer started to feel a bit neglected.
Well, and neglected and, you know, emotionally disconnected from his parents, which can be...
Where that'd be really damaging.
Like, really damaging for a child, right?
Absolutely. Those formative years.
Yeah.
They're so important.
And then as he's getting into his teenage years, we're seeing some patterns emerge. Increasing awkwardness, socially.
Isolation and alcoholism.
Yeah.
He started, you know, having problems with alcohol very young.
Which is like, that's such a red flag at that age.
Huge red flag. I mean, he was already trying to... Escape from something, numb himself.
And then on top of all of that, you know, we see this really disturbing thing emerge, which is a fascination with dead animals.
Yeah, this is beyond, like, you know, just morbid curiosity. You know.
He was dissecting them, collecting the bones. You know, this wasn't just like a phase he was going through. It was really indicative of these macabre interests.
Yeah, detached.
A real detachment from life, from the sanctity of life.
From life, yeah. And then, you know, I think the turning point, the most significant turning point, at least from what we know, is his first kill.
In 78?
78, yeah. He just graduated from high school. He was living at home with his parents.
Picked up a hitchhiker.
Picked up Stephen Hicks.
And lures him back to the house. And that's when things take a really dark turn. He ends up killing Hicks, and his explanation is chilling, you know, because it's so simple. He didn't want him to leave.
Yeah, like that.
It speaks to that fear of abandonment.
That's not a red flag.
Loneliness.
That's a whole siren.
This need for control. That's just gonna
and the way he disposed of the body
escalate horrifyingly over time.
Dissolving the flesh, crushing the bones. It's methodical.
It's methodical.
Calculated,
and just horrifying.
And after this kill, there was like a period of quiet, like almost like a holding pattern, and then he enrolls in Ohio State, like pushed by his father.
Yeah, his father was trying to get him on track, instill some discipline.
But it didn't stick, drops out. Ends up enlisting in the Army.
Right, you can see his father's, like, desperation there.
Yeah.
To try to get him on a normal path.
But
but the Army didn't work out either.
Yeah, the Army doesn't work out.
His drinking problem continued, and he was eventually discharged.
And during this time in the military, there are actually accusations of sexual assault against him.
Right.
Although nothing's ever filed.
No charges were ever filed.
So it's like the darkness is there. It's simmering.
It's there, It's simmering beneath the surface.
And then in 87, after living with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin, the killings start again.
They begin again, yeah.
And they escalate. It's not just dramatically, yeah. It's not just the frequency. It's like the nature of them changes.
Right.
Yeah. It gets more brutal, more
ritualistic.
More ritualistic, yeah. And over the next 4 years, he murders 16 more men and boys.
16, often targeting them at gay bars or bus stops.
Yeah, promising money or sex.
Money or sex.
But, yeah, his true intentions were...
far more sinister.
Far more sinister.
Yeah.
And it's this killing, it just became like a compulsion. Like he couldn't control it, yeah. And it's... during this period, 1990, that he moves into the Oxford apartments.
Right.
And he takes with him, like, the mummified head and genitals of a previous victim.
I know.
It's like, what does that tell you?
Oh. It's chilling, yeah. I mean, the details of that apartment are truly chilling. The sources describe, like, a foul odor that permeated everything.
Oh, God.
Boxes of hydrochloric acid, which he was using to dissolve the bodies. The walls were adorned with nude male posters, and he would constantly play the Exorcist 3 videotape.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just paints this really disturbing picture.
Like a mind just spiraling down.
A mind spiraling down, yeah.
Yeah, and his methods were becoming more and more just depraved.
Yeah.
He was drugging his victims, experimenting with, like, these crude lobotomies to try to create, like, living zombies is what he called them.
Yeah.
And cannibalism starts to emerge as, like, a part of his...
as part of his ritual. Yeah. It's important to note that he wasn't, like, just killing for the sake of killing, you know?
Right. It was more than that.
It was this obsession with control and domination, possessing his victims completely. Yeah. The lobotomies, the cannibalism, it was all an attempt to, like, strip his victims of their humanity, their individuality, to make them into, like, objects that he could
control.
He could control and manipulate.
God, it's just awful.
It's awful. Yeah.
And then you have these, like, all these missed opportunities to stop him.
Yeah.
Like the incident in 91 with the police are called to his apartment by his neighbors.
Like concerned neighbors.
Yeah, who found Connor Synth phone wandering outside.
Drugged and disoriented. Yeah.
And, I think this is, like, one of the most
infuriating and heartbreaking aspects of this case.
Infuriating, yeah.
Because the officers, they just dismissed it.
They dismissed it as a domestic dispute.
Yeah, ignoring all the signs.
All the signs, yeah.
Potential danger.
Yeah. They literally returned Synth phone to Dahmer. To Dahmer's apartment.
Even though the neighbors are like, no.
Despite their pleas.
Yeah. It's such a tragic example of...
It is.
How, like... biases and assumptions can lead to devastating consequences.
Yeah.
And it's like how systemic
failures within law enforcement allowed him to continue.
Yeah, to continue. And it's because of that, that failure that he's allowed to kill for 2 more months.
2 more months
before finally
until Tracy Edwards
escapes. And it's Edwards' bravery that finally leads authorities to Dahmer's apartment, and they uncover the full
extent of his crime.
Horrible extent of his crimes, yeah.
And it's, what they found there was just...
like a nightmare.
Yeah, like a nightmare.
Polaroids of dismembered bodies.
Yeah.
Human remains in the refrigerator in a 57-gallon drum filled with acid, skulls, a collection of tools.
And it's overwhelming.
Used in his gruesome rituals.
The sheer depravity of it all.
It's overwhelming, yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the number of victims or the brutality. It was just like the cold, calculated...
the cold, calculated way.
Yeah, the planning.
The meticulous planning, the preservation of the body parts.
It's hard to even, like, comprehend.
It speaks to a level of detachment and perversion that's difficult to comprehend.
And then we get to the trial.
Yeah.
And... the whole nation, the world is captivated.
The world was captivated.
As they're trying to, like, make sense of this.
To try to make sense of it, yeah.
Of his confessions.
Of his confessions and the details.
Details.
The gruesome details.
It's fascinating. In like a morbid way.
Yeah.
To see how Dahmer himself reacted during all of this.
Well, from what we know, He remained pretty calm and collected throughout the proceedings.
Wow.
Even when they were presenting like the most graphic evidence.
It was just like detached.
It was almost like a detachment.
Yeah.
Like he was recounting, some mundane story.
Yeah, it's such a chilling.
Rather than facing the consequences of these horrific acts.
A psychological disconnect.
Yeah.
It's almost like he knew intellectually that what he did was wrong.
Yeah.
But he wasn't able to grasp.
To connect with the emotional weight.
Yeah, to grasp like the emotional weight of it all. His lawyers ended up deciding to pursue an insanity plea.
Yeah, it was a controversial decision.
Which always raises these questions about like the nature of evil and free will and like what is it?
And the legal definition of sanity, right?
Yeah, exactly. What is
right? When does a disturbed mind cross the line into a criminal intent?
Yeah, and it was this like complex legal battle. The defense is arguing, he's mentally ill and
controllable urges.
Yeah, these uncontrollable urges, and the prosecution is arguing he's a
cunning predator.
Yeah, who
planned these
and
calculously planned and executed his crimes.
Yeah, it's like these two narratives are clashing.
Two narratives clashing.
Yeah, expert witnesses are called.
Yeah,
psychological evaluations are presented.
But ultimately, the jury rejected the insanity plea.
Wow.
They found him
sane.
Legally sane and guilty on all 15 counts.
All 15 counts of murder.
Yeah. It sent shockwaves through the nation.
I bet.
I mean, the jury, they deliberated for days, and they seem to believe that despite his psychological issues, he had the capacity to understand
that it was wrong.
That what he was doing was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that he could control his behavior. He was choosing to act on these impulses. Yeah.
So a lot of people felt like that brought a sense of justice.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Holding him accountable.
But it also brings up again, like the role of mental illness in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, it's a debate that
which continues to this day.
That continues to this day, absolutely.
Yeah. So he's found guilty.
Okay.
So now let's explore like what happens next. His life behind bars and the ultimate end to his reign of terror.
Well, following his conviction, he was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms.
Wow.
A total of 937 years.
937 years.
In prison.
Wow.
And he was sent to the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. Maximum security prison.
Maximum security, yeah.
Where he would spend the rest of his days.
So initially he was kept in solitary.
Yeah, solitary confinement for his own protection. I mean, the fear of retribution from other inmates.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Was very real.
Yeah. I mean, there are some crimes that...
Given the nature of his crime.
Yeah, that just make you a target.
And the widespread revulsion they evoked.
Yeah. But eventually they did integrate him.
Yeah. Eventually he was integrated into the general prison population.
Into the Gen Pop.
But under close observation. Yeah.
So, of course.
Of course.
So it's got to be like, what a contrast to his life.
Stark contrast. I mean, all of the control that he craved was gone.
Yeah.
His days were filled with routine, menial tasks.
Yeah, routine.
Limited interaction with others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder what was going through his head during those years.
Yeah, I mean, there are conflicting accounts about his mental state.
Really?
During his imprisonment.
Okay.
Some reports indicate that he did express remorse.
Okay.
And that he found solace in religion.
Okay.
He started reading the Bible.
Okay.
Engaging in conversations with the prison chaplain.
It's not uncommon.
Perhaps seeking
for people to turn to faith.
Some kind of redemption.
Yeah.
Yeah, in prison.
It is a way to cope with, the bleakness of their surroundings, to find meaning.
Right.
And maybe even to seek forgiveness. Yeah. And for some, I mean, it does raise the question of like, is it genuine or is it just a way to like manipulate or just find some sort of peace?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, given the nature of his crimes, any claims of remorse or religious conversion were
met with skepticism.
Yeah, with a lot of skepticism. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to
disbelief.
Disbelief. Yeah. It's hard to reconcile like the monster.
The monster they had come to know with a repentant sinner.
Right. And his time in prison ends up being pretty short-lived.
It was.
He's murdered in 94.
In 94. Brutally murdered by a fellow inmate.
Really? That's just what a
Yeah.
What a shocking
end to an
already horrific story.
Yeah.
Tell me more about what happened.
So, Dahmer, along with 2 other inmates, Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver, they were assigned to clean the prison gym. And while they were unsupervised, Scarver attacked both Dahmer and Anderson, beating them severely.
And Dahmer died.
And Dahmer died from his injuries about an hour after arriving at the hospital. Anderson died 2 days later.
Oh, wow.
And Scarver, who was already serving a life sentence for murder, received 2 additional life sentences for the killings of Dahmer and Anderson.
It's almost it's surreal.
Surreal.
Yeah. The man who terrorized and murdered so many is himself killed.
Killed in this brutal act of violence.
Yeah.
Scarver later claimed that he killed Dahmer because he was repulsed by his crimes.
I mean, who wouldn't be?
Specifically mentioning the way Dahmer would reportedly taunt other inmates.
Really?
With his gruesome acts.
So like his own darkness.
Yeah, like his own darkness.
Caught up with him.
Caught up to him.
Even
in prison. Yeah.
And some people have speculated that it might have been racially motivated.
Yeah, because many of his victims were men of color.
Right.
Yeah.
So regardless of the motive, it's a reminder that even within
a system designed to...
a system that's supposed to
punish and rehabilitate.
Yeah.
Violence and retribution can still reign supreme.
Yeah. It's chilling. It's a reminder that that even in a place where, they're trying to remove violence, it can still erupt in these horrifying ways. And his death didn't bring an end to the questions, the pain, the debate surrounding this case.
No. And one of the key debates centers around the victims. I think it's essential to remember that behind these, sensational headlines and this macabre fascination, there were real people.
Real people, yeah.
Primarily young men from marginalized communities whose lives were tragically cut short.
And their stories are so often overshadowed by Dahmer's notoriety.
Overshadowed.
But they deserve to be
heard.
Because it's their stories, it's their humanity.
Right.
That really expose the devastating impact.
Devastating impact of his crimes.
Yes.
I mean, you think about his first victim, Stephen Hicks.
18 years old.
18 years old, on his way to a rock concert when he encountered Dahmer. Yeah. And then there's 14-year-old James Dockstader, lured to Dahmer's grandmother's house with a promise of money.
Just stop.
Richard Guerrero, a 22-year-old aspiring photographer, very talented and ambitious by all accounts.
Yeah.
Tony Hughes, a 31-year-old deaf man.
And, of course, Connor Axon at the sum phone.
Right, the 14-year-old who managed to escape, only to be returned to Dahmer by the police.
How do you even process that?
His story is a haunting reminder of the failures of law enforcement and
just not recognizing the signs.
Not recognizing the signs of abuse and exploitation.
And these are just a few.
Just a few.
Of the many victims.
The many lives stolen by Dahmer.
It's hard to even imagine the pain that their families went through.
Unimaginable.
Yeah. Not only grieving, but having to
grapple with these horrific circumstances, seek justice for these unimaginable acts.
I think it's so important for us to acknowledge that pain and recognize that behind all the statistics and the sensationalism, these are real people.
Real people.
Whose lives mattered.
Absolutely.
And speaking of impact, this case didn't just reveal a monster.
Right.
It kind of exposed these flaws in the system.
Systemic flaws.
That allowed him to operate undetected for so long.
Right.
It's almost like Dahmer was a symptom of something.
Of a larger sickness.
Yeah.
A darkness that was already present.
Yeah. And it forced these really important, if difficult, conversations about mental health.
Right.
Homophobia.
Law enforcement practices.
Law enforcement. The vulnerability of
marginalized communities.
You're right. It's all connected.
All interconnected.
So it's if we really want to prevent future tragedies, we can't just focus on catching the monster.
Right.
We have to understand the conditions that
allowed him to thrive.
Yeah, that allowed him to thrive.
Yeah. requires a willingness to look inward, to examine our own biases and prejudices.
It's about creating a society where everyone feels...
Work toward a more just and equitable...
safe and valued and supported.
Society.
And then there's the media's role in all of this, right? Like, the coverage was so extensive.
It was extensive and often sensationalized. And I think, it's arguable that it contributed to this morbid fascination surrounding him.
Yeah. Which raises all these ethical questions about like how we consume and report on true crime.
Can we engage with these stories in a way that is both informative and respectful without exploiting the victims or glorifying the perpetrator?
Yeah, and I think it's just important for us to remember that at the heart of every true crime story are real people.
Real people whose lives were irrevocably altered by violence.
And we have to honor their memories.
You have to honor their memories.
Learn from their story.
Learn from their stories.
And use that knowledge to push for positive change.
Absolutely. The Dahmer case, it's a reminder of this dark potential that exists within humanity, but it's also a reminder of our capacity for empathy, for resilience,
and for hope.
We can choose to let these stories consume us with fear and despair, or we can use them as a catalyst for creating a better world.
And that is a choice we each have to make.
It is. And
I hope this deep dive has given you some things to think about, not just as you navigate the world of true crime, but beyond that.
Remember, we can never fully erase the darkness, but we can choose to focus on the light, on the stories of those who fought back, on the communities that came together in the face of this tragedy, and on the ongoing efforts to build a more just and compassionate world.
Well said. Well, that's it for our deep dive on Jeffrey Dahmer.
A chilling case.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive.
We'll see you then.